So good afternoon, good afternoon. It's been one of those days. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Biz Talk. My name is Ade Shakoya. I'll be the host taking you through this conversation. And today we're having a serious conversation. Obviously, the conversations we tend to have on here are serious, but today we're going to be delving into an area that we haven't touched on so far, and that's the area of politics. Let me see if I can quickly get this thing up. So bear with me 1 second. So some of you may have had an opportunity to see a talk that I've done recently, but also some stuff that I've been looking at. And when we look at the current situation in the Black community, it is what it is, but any community. And we do recognize that there are many aspects to a community. And one of those key aspects in terms of rebuilding any community involves politics. Even if we just have a look at this diagram quickly, we can see how politics influences so many different things, like laws, the judiciary system, which we know is, depending on how you look at it, either we're underrepresented from an aspect of, kind of heading it up and delivering and judges and stuff like that, but overrepresented in terms of some of the percentage of us as part of a percentage of the whole population are represented within the judicial and prison systems. We see how all of these things have a big impact on all aspects of our lives. And obviously, I don't need to, to tell most of you about it because you live this every day. And that's why today we're having a conversation which is looking at the politics side of things. Politics is fundamental to the change and transformation that we're looking for, because it's at that level, at that table, that some of the real change happens in terms of curriculums, in terms of laws, in terms of sentencing. And some of those things, they go far and wide. Do not underestimate the fact that what we're talking about here is complex adaptive systems. We won't go too much into that, but the fact that all of this is intellect. Politics impacts our schools, impacts our housing, it impacts jobs, it impacts income, impacts health. All of these various things, they're all kind of tied in together. Fundamentally underlying all of that is the economics. Economics and the power of the community can determine to the degree which they can turn these things around. But enough about that. You know that already. And so today we're going to have a conversation. If you're watching online, good evening. I encourage you to put your information or put any questions you have, because today we have the London 21 mayor candidate, Neville Watson, on the show. And what we're going to do is just going to be asking him some questions, because this is more geared towards to understand why, in effect, Neville should have our vote. And so, first of all, good evening, Neville. Thank you for coming along.
Good evening, Ade, and thanks for inviting me.
Awesome, great stuff. So, as we get kick-started, I'm going to ask you to quickly just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who Neville Watson is.
Okay, as you explained, my name is Neville Watson. I'm not a politician. I can declare that now. I suppose my path into the world of politics, and I think you made a very good point at the beginning, that politics plays a part in all our lives, whether we appreciate it or not, whether we like it or not. Politics drives the agenda, and we can become passengers in that, which most people aren't. There's nothing wrong with that. Or at times you feel that it's time to get up front and get a front seat, and sometimes even take the wheel. And I suppose the analogy I've been giving you is when you're running for something like London Mayor, you're looking to take the wheel. So, but my life's been centered around my work with young people, which I suppose dovetails with my business life. My business life was all around marketing and sales and training. And I did that up and down the country. And I also did that around the world as well. I was blessed to be able to deliver programs in Germany, work in America, and work for corporations over here, be it British Gas for 4 years, where I was brought in to deliver programs and train all the management teams at British Gas. So, but my work in my business life supported my voluntary work, and my voluntary work was what I was really passionate about. And so it was always about mentoring, supporting, because I always think about where I come from, and I think of my upbringing and how easily it would have been for me to take another road. And I didn't leave school with the best exams. And I had to learn so much more when I left school. And I started to understand things better. And it led me to, I suppose, to understand that life is constant learning. And I'm a student of life. And so for me, it's all about how I can help to raise aspiration, help those who help to also build expectation in our young people, and get to the root of some of the challenges that we face. And fortunately, I've been able to support a lot of young people who have now gone on to are producing. 5 of my academy are now business people in their own right. They go as far as Australia. I received a video from one of my young men in Australia who's coaching in Australia now. Robin Travis is another young man I've been mentoring for 12 years. He's on his 3rd book, and Robin Travis was imprisoned in Jamaica and deported back to the UK. And again, supposedly he doesn't class himself as that, as a gang leader around Hackney, went to uni, criminal justice degree, and he's on his 3rd book. And you can also Google Robin Travis, because his book, Prisoners to the Street, is something that he delivers to the prisons up and down the country. So it was always for me about how can I raise up my young people within my community. And God has blessed me with that ability, and I can share some of my life, and I can empathize. So that really speaks to me. So my road to politics came through my social action. It was about seeing injustices on the ground level and trying to give voice to the voiceless. And I call it the voices, to people who just seem to not have a voice, and to be a defender of them as well. So I stood in the breach and supported young men who have been sectioned, and I did a lot of work in St. Anne's Hospital, psychiatric ward, fought to get men, young lads, to get them out of that, dealt with families who were having immigration problems, and with the help of my solicitor, my friends, was able to be quite successful at times. So it was always about how we can work with people on the ground, and I didn't want to get paid for that. And so my professional life allowed me to do that. It allowed me to work in my community. I didn't have to receive any money. I can do it just because I enjoy doing it. And it also includes my work with local business. For example, in West Green Road, the businesses I've supported in West Green Road, helping them to be sustainable and giving them some basic marketing tools and explaining to them the role of a small entrepreneur and sort of developing those skills. So that's who I am.
Awesome, great, thank you very much. And so you've kind of given us a little idea about how your road into politics, and throughout this conversation at various points we can revisit it where relevant. But first of all, I've got to start off by asking you this key question, and correct me if anything I'm about to say is wrong. I believe in 2015 or thereabouts, you were the UKIP candidate for Edmonton, I believe it was. Of course, that whole Brexit situation and everything else, UKIP is an emotional, it triggers different type of emotion. So my question to you will be, and I'm sure many of the listeners are wondering that, UKIP, why? What's all that about? And why should they vote for you on the back end of that decision?
Okay, I'm going to take the end bit. Why should they vote? I don't think anyone should vote for me as a result of any one thing. Okay. I like to think that my many years as a Labour Party member, if you're talking about just from politics, I think you can't just look at one part of someone's life and say, well, I won't or not, based on that. And also, of course, I'm going to tell you why I left Labour, why I decided to stand for UKIP at that point, and to give you an insider's view of it, because I think, I think we all become a lot wiser to the media now. Let's look at current examples. Look at the media's depiction of Meghan Markle, for example. Look at what's happening right now, and it's current right now. If we were to believe the media, really, we would think this is all down to Meghan Markle and Harry, but mostly this Meghan has come into the royal family and destroyed the royal family. That could be an image that we could almost see. Well, the image that's trying to be painted, but of course we know that's not quite the full story. Let me give another example as well. I will say this as someone who is inside that organization. So please allow me to just give an insider's view of that. Now, UKIP were as racist as Jeremy Corbyn was anti-Semitic. Why do I say that? Neither are really the truth. Of course, Jeremy Corbyn got labeled as anti-Semitic, a Palestinian sympathizer, Hamas, and all these other things were leveled at him. But did we believe all of them? But the media painted Jeremy Corbyn that way, like they painted, of course, Nigel Farage. But let me just share with you my role within UKIP. Number one, while I was in UKIP, I was made chair of Christian Action UKIP, which was quite a large group across the whole of the country. I also wrote articles for Christian Soldiers, which is a Christian newspaper journal that comes out every 3 months to UKIP as well. A lot of people wouldn't know that because it wouldn't be in the media. Of course not. Also understanding this, and even though the ship has now sailed rather on Brexit, but at that time, UKIP was the only voice I heard speaking about the EU. Just before then, before joining, I was in Jamaica. I was in Ocherios in Jamaica. And while in Jamaica, there's a clock tower. I mean, many may not know this, but there's a big clock tower in the middle of Ocherios. And in there's a farmer's market. And I love farmer's markets. And at the farmer's market, I went there and I was speaking to a few of the lads there. And they had what we call in Jamaica, what they call them crocus bags. Crocus bag is a sack where they come from the field with their provisions, their goods, which is yams and bananas and everything, planting the lot. And we were talking about the fact that they were sharing with me that Britain no longer buys supplies from them. And they said to me that, you know, since I won't do it in a Jamaican slang, but they said, since you've been in this European Union, this EU, you stopped trading with us. And that resonated with me. So when I got back from Jamaica, I started to do some research about the European Union. Because before then, it didn't really impact my life. Like many people who really thought about it. We've been in it. It's a club we've been in since 1972. When we went in, many of us, some people wouldn't have been alive even when we went in. But we was in there for over 40 odd years. So it didn't really impact our lives. But then I came back from Jamaica and started to research it, the EU. And the more I researched the EU, the more I realized what a stranglehold this organization had on the countries, or the countries that were in this elite club. But also what I realized that it was, while you were in the EU, we couldn't really trade with the Commonwealth. And I thought, it now makes sense why we no longer buy from the Commonwealth, because we had to buy from those countries that the EU designated we should buy from in terms of trade. But the more I looked into the EU, I started to look at the articles and the laws, and I noticed that the EU had written out any reference to God. Everything within the EU. So I looked further. And the more I dug in and the more I researched the EU, the more I realized that this EU was not a good place. And if I also, as someone who was raised in the world of sport and football and played a lot of football, I can tell you now that on tours, any tours, whether it was in Belgium or in France or in Spain, when it comes to racism, going back, and ask any professional player today will tell you this, there was more racism within Europe than anywhere else. So when I put this all together, I thought, no. So when I got back, there was no one talking about the EU. And then I heard Nigel Farage talking about leaving this EU. And I thought, I'm going to do some research on this UKIP party, UK Independence Party. So I then, the same research, the same critical thinking that I used to research the EU, I used that and did my due diligence for UKIP. Once I'd done that, I realized, hang on, I want to campaign also to leave this club. There was no one doing it then. In 2016, of course, and we'll move it forward. In 2016, UKIP was able to force the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, I say forced because he didn't have to give a referendum, but because by then there was a European Parliament election and UKIP got a number of people in, a number of MEPs in to the European Parliament, he was then cajoled maybe to offer the country a referendum in 2016. Of course, the rest of that is history. And also I say to people, of course, that ship has now sailed because look, we had people on both sides. In my family, I had my brother who voted for Remain. So it was split. And let me say this now. I don't believe that the EU was all bad either, even though I'm saying that. It wasn't all bad, neither was it all good. But the points that affected my life and I understand it. I felt that I didn't want to be part of it. But there was another thing.
I guess it's totally understandable. It's one of those things everyone has to, just like with any of these decisions in life, people have to go with the decision that resonates with them. And that, of course, that's just what it is based on where they're coming from, what their views are. And so I guess, I appreciate you sharing that. It sounds like you gave it some thought. It wasn't just off the whim. And it is what it is. But let's get back to really what we're discussing today. So why Mayor of London?
Well, I don't have to tell you, some things I'm going to say here. London is one of the most culturally diverse cities on the planet. We know it's the banking capital of the world. Now, also, before I go into why Mayor of London, it's important to understand an important fact. The mayor doesn't have any legislative powers. It has the mayor's position, or the seat of the mayor has administrative powers. Some. But what it really has going for it, it has what I refer to, Ade, as soft powers. And it's these soft powers that can be used for the betterment of the people of London if you don't politicize the role, which has been done for many years. And why I say if you don't politicize it? Because if you only stand as Labour, Conservative, Lib Dems, whoever it is, your decisions often are based on what the party are saying. But a mayor's role is to be a champion. Sorry. You don't politicize the role.
Sorry, playback. Ignore that.
Oh, sorry. I thought
many years. And why I say you don't politicize it?
You listen to yourself, right? Not a problem. Carry on. Sorry. Continue with what you're saying.
Sorry. Right. Yeah. And that threw me. Okay. And so, for me, being London Mayor isn't really the office of Mayor. It's about what could I bring to the office of Mayor with all the challenges it brings as well. How do I make the everyday Londoner, how do I make their lives better? How do I say, how do I? But it's important for me to speak to every Londoner's lived experience. This is not anecdotal. We have to speak as it happens. People's lived experience. Being London Mayor means lifting up individuals, small businesses, not just about big business. It's keeping people safe. I'm not going to spend this period of time, by the way, and highlighting or shining a light on the record of the last mayor. But let's just talk about what's in the news factually. Crime. Crime has gone up enormously over this period of time. I hate the term knife crime, but crime, we say it as it is. And what has been done? What we've done is close down many of our police stations, taking many of our bobbies off the street. Now, that's not the only answer, but I believe what we need to do is reinvest monies, a lot of the money that's given. And as London Mayor, you have a £17 billion annual budget to run that, to run London. But it's how we invest that money. And I believe it's got to be invested in communities. It's got to be invested in mentoring organizations. It's got to be invested in homes that have not been built, but affordable. And when we say affordable homes, not the affordable we hear about often on the TV, but really affordable homes. And I have a plan for that as well. So for me, being mayor is having someone that understands the heartbeat of London. I was born here. I schooled here in London, in North London. In fact, I was born in Hackney, moved up to Stoke-Newington, then Tottenham, now Enfield. So I've never moved that far. I'm a Londoner. I understand London. I understand what businesses need. I understand what big business need as well. But I also understand that we have to bring all sections of our communities together. And I believe I can do that. I start off saying we're the most culturally diverse city on the planet. But there's disparities. This deep inequalities. I've never, in all my time, growing up, I never believed I would come to a point in living in London that I can hear the term in-work poverty, where there's people who are working hard and still are depending on food banks. We have to focus on them. Our homeless, how we're investing. We have to invest back into areas that affect everyday people. And I believe some of the vanity projects that money's been used for, because they are politically expedient, and I go back to politicizing the role. If you take the politics out of it and just work for London alone, many of the things we will do won't score political points, but they'll score points with the people of London. And that's what I intend to do. So I want to support my people of London. I say my people, I don't mean black people. No, that, please let me make that clear. In my campaign team, I have people from Pakistan. I have people from all parts of India. I have people from across the globe. Muslims, Hindus make up my team. I have a team that includes, by the way, 7 GPs, because it's the health and well-being of London that we're going to focus on. So our focus, Ade, and the mayoral focus, especially post-lockdown and I say post pandemic, but let's just call it that, is how we're affecting the lives of individuals of London. And I have the plan for how we're going to do that. How we're going to work with people on the ground. How are we going to get businesses back up? How are we going to support small business? How are we going to make sure that there's services, NHS, for example, local care services in the community, make sure they're not being closed down. So it's a number of those areas that I personally will be heading up. And of course, I'll be in a position, because I'm not political, to be able to speak to Boris Johnson, Parliament, and he won't be, say, not aggressive, but certainly he'll be more amenable to me than he'll probably be to potentially Sadiq Khan. So I'll use what I have and what we have to make sure we get the best for Londoners. So it's just my passion. Sorry. So I interrupted you, so you were about to speak.
No, carry on.
Sorry, yeah. So rather than make a dialogue on that, yes, it's been able to use those soft powers, those negotiating powers, making London as an ambassador for inward trade, inward investment, making sure that everyone knows, and those other Commonwealth countries and the world knows that London's open for business, and it's how we make those presentations. And that's my forte, negotiating, bringing the best deal back, opening up London. And also it's important how we're actually helping those people who want to trade outside and trade with organizations. So making sure we're putting on exhibitions, making sure we are liaising across the world. I have a plan to ensure that we bring into London opportunities that were not here before. And I will do that because I know how we can do it if we put Londoners first and not our parties and not our own political gain.
Awesome. So I appreciate that. So I know as part of when I was looking at your website, there are kind of 5 key areas that you're looking at. We're not going to have enough time to go through all of those, but there's just a couple of areas I'd like to touch on and get kind of a bit more detail about what you're thinking and how. So first of all, in regards to crime, which you mentioned there, we are aware that we do have a challenge with some of the stuff that we're seeing on the streets, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But what I want to talk to you is about, so you speak about how you intend to go about restoring faith and trust in the Met.
Yeah.
2 parts to this question. What do you think is the root cause of that problem? And then how do you go, or how are you planning to go about restoring that faith and trust in the Met? And by the Met, I'm assuming you're talking about the Metropolitan Police, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, the first thing is this, and I mentioned this before. One of our plans is I mentioned the fact that many of our police stations, and you'll probably be aware of this, many of them have been shut down now. And community policing is no more. So one of our plans is to create police hubs. Now, police hubs work this way. For example, we did this when I was doing some work within Broadwater Farm in Tottenham. And we had an officer that came in, and he came in 2 or 3 days a week into the community centre, and he was just based there. And also he started to get involved with the lads with football, tennis, and table tennis, and playing games and stuff like that. Now, what happened was, once they started to get to know the officer, suddenly it wasn't anything. It wasn't any more about this is a policeman or whatever. It was, this is John. I've seen what can happen when trust is front and center. And the problems that we face often with the police is there's a lack of trust from the community. Also, that's not been helped, obviously, as well, by some of our officers who often, and I've had conversations with leaders within the Met, numerous conversations over the years. I'll give you one example about a conversation I had with the chief superintendent, Haringey Police. Now it's Haringey and Enfield. And I went there, we were talking about a few areas, and he said to me, and they called me Nev, they said, Nev, look, how do we do this when I've got three officers who have just come out of I think it was Hendon or whatever. They've come out of training. I think one of them was born raised in Cornwall, and the other two came from another part of just outside London. And they said, I've had to put two of these officers into Broadwater Farm. They've come from training, they've not policed London, and now they're policing Broadwater Farm. So what's going to happen naturally? The first thing, from an officer's perspective, what's his perspective on black people? Now imagine if you have lived in an area where you've hardly seen a black person, where you see very few different colors, shades of white, other than white. Now you're going to police London. Moreover, an area like Broadwater Farm. So the first thing that he said to me was, this is the challenge that we have, which is the shortage of police officers. We're putting young raw recruits into areas. Now, my view is this. It should be what I call horses for courses policing. If you are policing London, you need more senior officers, and they have to be trained in how to deal with people from the black and Asian parts of society. So I then suggested training, that I would provide some training. Now they didn't take me up on the training that I offered them. But you see, it starts from building trust. And I use that example, is that often it's the officers themselves that are frightened. And so their reaction sometimes is built up around that fear. So the first time they interact with a young black boy, they see his walk, they see his manner as not just being just a London thing or that's how they do things. They see it as intimidating. And so you get the reactions that we get. And so it's how we then completely demystify and completely change that. And how we do that is by getting officers working in the communities, not as PC plod, but they get to know them as Peter and Paul and John and Frank and whatever. And they get to know the community they're working in. And police hubs will do that. They will do that. And then you start to build up trust as well. I've seen it work. I know it works. And what will surprise people is this. And of course, this is going to be done with consent of the community, clearly. But when a community consents to this, let me tell you what actually happens. We're now talking about crime prevention. Because you see, and I'll give you an example of something that has happened, where there's a situation where a young man, a mother, has found a brown bag with a weapon under the bed. I'm not whether it's a gun or a knife under the bed. Now she's not going to take that object to the Tottenham police station. She would never do that. But yet she's frightened. She just found it in when she was clearing up. She's seen it there. So what does she do? What does she do? Now, if John was in the foyer and has a little office there, imagine if she had the comfort of knowing, I just want to go and speak to John. I don't want to take it any further and get some advice from John. You see, it's building back trust, and you build it back by policing in a community way. And that's what we're going to do. Community policing. And I'm going to do that also by creating public-private sponsorships. So private organizations can sponsor PCSOs as well. So it's important to know that to tackle this from the root, building trust, because we do want our police there. We do want the presence. Believe me, don't people often think we as a people, we don't want, no, we do. But we don't want them to intimidate. We don't want them to give us a less than favorable experience for our young people when they're dealing with them.
So what would you say? So what would you so what would you say to somebody who's watching right now who says, okay, fair enough, but John's just one person. John does not represent all of the police force. And so though people may get to know John and John may not get to know community, John is not policing the whole community. John may not be the rotten apple. John may not be the person who is actually one of those officers whose conduct, mannerism, etc. are really what have fractured and continue to fracture the relationship with the local communities. Bearing in mind, this relationship, call it what you want, fractured, dysfunctional, whatever, goes back many generations.
Well, I'd say this, that many generations, actually, I will just correct that, Ade. Our parents, wrongly or rightly, had a great deal of regard for the police. In fact, I grew up in a time when if the police said that you did something wrong, your parents wouldn't believe you, they'd believe the policeman. We know now that the game has changed slightly, and it's not a game, but it's now not like that. There is a distrust now. But what I say to everybody, we have to start from somewhere, because you see, we have 33,000 police officers that police a city with just under 9 million residents. Now, just do the maths. 33,000 officers for nearly 9 million residents. So they must police by consent. What the police have to understand as well, that they're not a police force, they're a police service. And that's what I'm making. When I talked about the soft powers, it's the relationship that I would have. And for example, Cressida Dick is she's the chief of the Met, head of the Met, commander of the Met. It's how we're developing that relationship, because it's going to come down to training. It's going to come down to how much the police want to serve their communities. And I believe a good mayor can develop that relationship through his soft power, because you see, it's the mayor that has ultimate control over the police. So it's a few areas when I say, you know, the mayor doesn't have that many powers. It has administrative powers, not legislative powers. It can't make laws, but it has certain powers. For example, over TFL, it chairs TFL, and of course over the Met. So it's the Met. Imagine what someone like me can do with the Met. It's important. So it can go from the top. So it's what we're doing. So to create that trust, we have to build it up. My part of my team, one of the key members of my team, he's an ex-homicide detective. He would be my liaison with the police. He's another black man, I would tell you that now. He would be my direct liaison with Cressida Dick. But it's important because he served as an officer, served as a homicide detective as well, and plainclothes detective. So it's having these people on your team that can make the difference from the top. Now, we've got to make the difference from the top. And of course, it has to then cascade down to the officers on the street. And guess what? I will be hands-on. I'll be hands-on. Hands-on meaning, you see, it's about being at the coalface of some of these situations. You know, it's not about hiding in City Hall. Where there is a problem, I'll be at the coalface. I'll be at the front. And I will deal with it. And when the police know there's someone like that that's overseeing them, then we can start making the changes. You see, people used to accuse, I use this quick example. People said that Jeremy Corbyn, you know, I use an example because it fits this perfectly. He wasn't necessarily anti-Semitic, and he's not anti-Jewish or anything like that. But they said his views allowed that sentiment to rear its ugly head in the Labour Party. So even though he wasn't directly, he wasn't a part of those conversations, and he clearly didn't agree with those, but they felt his past views gave freedom to those views. And likewise from the top, the difference you can make from the top. So we have to make sure that the person who has overall say in the Met can put those strategies and philosophies into place. And I will do that, Ade. I will do that because I've been part of that. I've been, I can't, I won't even use the language that's been used to me as a young man in Hackney. But
Of course.
I've been thrown, planted, stuff planted on. I've had the whole thing happen. Don't think I sit here today in this because I'm now a grandfather, and I proudly that I haven't had this happen. Sorry.
I said congratulations.
Oh yes, sorry, yeah, thank you. But I'm saying to you, so I know. They say who feels it knows it. I've walked in the shoes. I've been in the cell. I've had the drugs planted in my pocket when I was naive enough to just lift my hand up. They said, "Oh, I want to search you," and I went. But then I was a bit naive, and and then they said, "Oh, I do it." And then, "Oh, what's this we found here, then, mate?" Oh, it's all yes. I've experienced that.
I hear you. I hear you.
So
sorry, Karen.
Yeah. So it's important to having been through that. And I suppose that's what's helped me when I've worked with my young people, when I've helped them understand how we can de-emotionalize the event when they're stopped. How we do it, how we flip the script.
That might give us a good segue into what I also want to talk to you about. We've only got about 20 minutes left. So, if we can just really go in on this, because you've got lots of, obviously, people out there who are listening. They want to hear who Neville Watson is and what you're going to do. So I guess, sharp, get in there, tell people what it is so that they can, really get to what it is you're about. So the London Mentoring Service, what is that? And what do you intend to achieve with that?
Yeah, well, the London Mentoring Service is where we now, and this is a perfect segue, where we pull all those areas into one. The police, the care center, local care centres, schools, colleges, community centres, faith groups, libraries. What we do under the London Mentoring Service, they all come under one. They're housed under one London Mentoring Service. So it's something whereby no child is lost. Because sometimes they talk about the problems with mental health. We have a situation, of course, where a young man in terms of if he's something's happened and he has to go and get seen to a local care centre. It's bringing all the services under one umbrella. And when I say that, no one falls between the gaps. So the London Mentoring Service will also allow schools to use their premises as after-school clubs and what we call tech villages between the hours of 4 and 10 in the evening. Faith groups will be open up for that as well. Where we
just back up quickly, just to get to some of the key points and some of the key benefits that potentially some of the viewers may get. So when you say a tech, what did you say? After-school tech club. And it'd be open to as well. What does that look like simply, and what are the benefits to the individuals who'll be going there?
Okay, what happens is we're working with schools. They open up their premises to the local community, between the hours of 4 or 5 till 10 o'clock, and they'll be doing computer studies and doing, for example, computer imagery. They would learn in terms of entrepreneurial skills in the tech clubs. It's there where they would be getting some of the, I suppose, business advice, VAT, and understanding.
It sounds like all of that is going to be very fundamental as well, because we're moving into the fourth industrial revolution, or we are in the fourth industrial revolution. Tech is driving everything. Everything that we've seen also from the pandemic and post-pandemic, it's going to be more and more about tech. So that sounds like an essential skill set for our young people to be able to develop, which gets them off the streets, but also prepares them for the future, right?
You've hit it now. The London Mentoring Service, see, within that, you would have, for example, you would have a doctor there as well. See, it's important. We'll have a GP, on site. We'll have somebody from the Met on site, all there, working there. So if someone wants to go up and have a conversation, all it needs is you'll get a fob. Yeah, you join up, you get a fob, and you can access that service. There'll be sports activities for those who want to do sports. For example, I also work very closely with a gentleman. I don't know if any of you follow football, but I've got someone who works with me closely on the team, is Les Ferdinand. And of course, having Les there is crucial in terms of his contacts within the sporting world. And we've got a lot of talented footballers as well in our communities. So it's often giving them an opening as well. So within the tech clubs, we'll have a lot of ex-pros and pros that will be working in the tech club. So we offer a bit of everything, but essentially, it's part of prevention. Again, everything I do and say speaks to prevention. It's about prevention. So it's ensuring that if we can bring people off the street, we give them those positive skills, the emotional life skills as well, and the technical ability through these tech clubs at the same time. And in there as well, by the way, we'll have counselors as well. Because, you know, a lot of our young men as well are suffering with can hide their depression. And it's something that's what I'm very keen on, and how we correct that. Because often a young black man's depression can be viewed as aggression. And then the interventions for them are different from often a white boy. A white boy will, and it happens a lot, unfortunately, Caucasian, they get prescribed CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but often a black boy will be in section. These are the disparities that happen on the ground.
Of course. So it's sounding like, just to kind of wrap this part up, it's sounding like, so the London Mentoring Services is going to bring together all the key services, some of the key services. And the intention is one of those assets being the tech hub, which in effect is about prevention by getting people off the streets, skilling them up, also providing them the support, in terms of the physical, mental health, and all the other bits and pieces that they may need to be able to live through whatever's going on in their lives right now. And I'm sure, I mean, I can see that potentially, if it's set up to work and is supported properly, can have a big impact on what we're seeing on the streets. Now, obviously, I've got to just quickly get through the rest of the stuff because, like I said, I'm very keen for you to touch on quickly and get to the point of some of these key things for the listeners out there who might be interested in it. So now you talk about tax reforms for supporting small businesses, and that you also intend to let Londoners keep more of their earnings to help business thrive. In 2 minutes, quickly tell us a little bit about that. What's that about?
Okay. First thing is obviously to understand the powers that I have. So quickly, in terms of London businesses, it's very important in terms of business rates. So it's my plan, speaking alongside, working with the government as well, to continue. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a business holiday at the moment for certain industries. In the entertainment industries, a lot of the restaurants have that. But some of our small business need that. So it's my intention to have a pocket of money, a pot of money there to support businesses for the next 2 years. I support them by helping them with their advertising, helping them in terms of if they want to bring on young people for apprenticeships, supporting them that way. And the money's there. And I say the money's there because, you see, if I had showed you the amount of money that's been wasted, I can give some figures now that are eye-watering. For example, in this last mayor, his spend for City Hall is 60% more than even Boris did. 572 million more than Boris spent.
So just a quick question. When you say he spent for City Hall,
Yeah.
I see as that building by London Bridge. Are you talking about it as a physical entity? Are you talking about it as more abstract?
Yeah, no. City Hall being inside it, the staffing and the things they do within City Hall, his spend there is 60% more than what Boris spent on his staffing. On his PR alone, personal PR, 3 million on his own personal PR. Point is, if we're going through this quickly, there's a lot of money that's been wasted because I believe it's been politicized. And if we take that money and not keep it internally, but make it work externally, we can do a lot of these projects, external projects. So it's about shifting money from one area to the other. Remember, I said 17 billion. Of course, that has to cover the fire service. It has to some house building, which I hope we get to talk about house building. Sure. And it has to also support a number of areas in the community. But there's waste currently, and I've identified, and I've got my finance people to identify the waste and how we can take money that's been used in what we feel is the wrong way and reinvest that back into our communities.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing there is that at the moment there's identified areas where money is potentially being wasted or is not necessarily getting the return on investment, return on opportunity, return on outcome, whatever you want to call it, that we would expect from that. And therefore you and your team would be looking to plug those gaps, redirect those monies into areas which you believe are key and essential to the lives, the livelihood, etc. of Londoners. Awesome.
Absolutely.
I mean, that sounds great. So we've only got a little bit of time left. Housing. I know you're talking about a deposit equity scheme. What does that look like? You know, in the little time that we've got, who would be eligible?
I'm going to give you a quick a snapshot of that. First thing, that is really aimed at our millennials, to be fair to you, between, you know, that range between 25 and 40, first-time buyers. Now, the government, there's a scheme.
Like a little bit over 40.
Sorry?
What happens if you're just a little bit over 40? Can you like get in?
Well, at the moment, it's got to be a no.
I'm just saying.
We had to use a demographic, and we used the millennials for a demographic, and it was that one. Now, and the reason for that is there is a scheme out there for first-time buyers, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't get you the deposit, because to go onto that scheme, you have to put up 5%, the government scheme, and a lot of people don't have the 5%. So the deposit equity scheme is a soft loan over the period while you're in the home. So it gives you the deposit that you only pay back once you sell your home. So that's the equity in the home. So, and then the city hall would have 5% of the sale when you sell. So it's a soft loan to get you on the housing ladder. Also, Tim, important that I'll be talking, I'm already speaking to, well, I say speaking to, I've researched already prefab homes as well, and the costing of putting prefab homes, and also building on brownfield sites. Something we need to do. We've got so many factories and so many brownfield sites that are disused, and we can build on those, and we can get London moving, and we can get these factories retrofitted for housing for Londoners.
Awesome. I mean, I really like to hear that. I mean, the prefabs as well, I think that is definitely a very good option. Having some experience in lean manufacturing and working with a couple in similar areas before, I totally understand and know how beneficial that can be, and also how that can help reduce the cost and the time it actually takes to build properties. Hopefully, you're also going to be considering 3D printing, so 3D printed houses. That technology exists as well, where you can actually get a house up in 24 hours and all that great stuff. So, you know, I think there's lots of opportunities to be able to address that. So as we start coming to the end of the show, once again, you've kind of touched on it, but I'd like you to just present it short and succinctly. What is your big why?
My big why is, why did we close down all the youth centres and put everybody, all young people on the street? I don't get it. That's my big one. Why did we do it? It was supposed to be cost saving, but we then released. Or I know, because I was part of that, and I say part of that, I worked with a lot of those young people, those experienced mentors and in the community workers. They were then put out to graze. These are people that spent years building a relationship in the community. Why did we shut down all our community centres?
Okay, awesome, great stuff. And just for any of the listeners out there, apologies, there's been a bit of an issue technically with the chat side of things. If you do have any questions as we start wrapping up, or anything you need Neville to expand on, please just put it in the chat. I'm trying to monitor Facebook as well and see if I can pick up anything from there. But at the moment, just going for the questions that we have in hand. Okay, cool. So here's another question for you. Who do you admire, dead or alive, and why?
Marcus Garvey.
Okay.
Marcus Garvey. I tell you why, as someone, from a human perspective, as a visionary, as someone that went through prejudice from his own people, Now, that must be the most hurtful thing, which is obviously part of our colonialism, where we had this lighter skin, darker skin. Marcus Garvey, as you may be aware, was a dark-skinned Jamaican who was not accepted by many Jamaicans, but he had to go to America. And he was the forerunner. People like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, all attribute a lot of things they did and their thoughts to Marcus Garvey. He viewed from the beginning that we should be looking towards Africa as a nation, as a black people, from whether from UK and from America, that our eyes should be focused on Africa. And I believe he was such a visionary. He had a conference back in I'll get my dates, I think it was 1940 something, my dates, yeah, but certainly very in the 1940s or so. He had a conference there, and it had 25,000 people attended this conference. He started the Black Star Liner, which was a ship he bought to transport goods from America to Africa. He started a Black Nurses Corporation. He was ahead of his time. And he then died a pauper in North Kensington, London. Marcus Garvey, as a visionary, as a man that was way ahead of his time. Marcus Garvey.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. So, the next three questions are important ones. Why should people vote for Neville Watson for 2021 London Mayor?
Is that you can answer three of them, or is that one? Is that the first one?
One. That's the first one.
Okay. Should I answer each one?
Yes, please.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
It can get confusing. I know how it feels when people ask like 101 questions at the same time.
Okay, right. Okay. Number one, if you want to just keep doing and keep getting what you're getting, you just continue vote the way you've been voting. I understand we're in a democracy, but if you truly want someone who could bring a progressive vision to London, someone that has his heart beats with every Londoner, someone that truly understands the fears, the hopes, the aspirations of Londoners, someone that has a team that can deliver all this, lend me your vote. I say lend because I don't expect you to, this is not party, we're not voting for Labour, Conservative, no, this is, remember you're voting for a London mayor, a representative, your ambassador, you're not voting for a party. Let's make sure we understand that. So lend me your vote and we take it from there.
Okay. Now, so, and I guess this goes back to, and correct me if anything I'm about to say is wrong. So you've said a number of times it's about removing the politics. So I guess what I'm hearing then is, as an independent candidate, the reason why you've been saying that is previous candidates have been tied into political parties, and therefore, or what is it?
No, sorry, I must correct. When I say I belong to a movement, a direct democracy movement, which is slightly different. And it would take too long to, I would just say to anybody, if you can just understand why I campaign for direct democracy. Switzerland have a direct democracy government in place. 26 states of America have a direct democracy. Direct democracy just means this. It brings greater accountability to your elected leaders. It means we then move City Hall to Town Hall, Whitehall to Town Hall, meaning local people have a say. They have a stake in what happens to them locally. When I said to you, it's about people's lived experience. Direct democracy allows people to control the agenda through a mechanism. I believe in direct democracy. And that's what I campaign. And I've campaigned on that ticket. I will also do something quite radical. I think it's time for Londoners to go back to the polls and go back and decide, do they still want a London mayor and a GLA? In 1998 was when this was voted in. And only 31% of Londoners took took part in the vote. 31%. That's how apathetic people were. That's not their fault. They weren't interested. And they voted for this GLA and this mayor. And in 2000, 2 years later, Ken Livingstone was elected as the first mayor, an independent mayor. But I'm telling you now, I would give Londoners an opportunity to go back, because I believe in a direct democracy. I want a mandate. So I want Londoners to have the chance again to decide, do we still want this extra layer of bureaucracy? Do we need it? Do we need it?
Awesome.
And if we need it, yeah.
Go on, sorry, go on.
Because I believe if I'm speaking about direct democracy, I have to, if I believe in direct democracy, then I have to live it. And I believe people, if they want it, I will give them a referendum on whether we still want the GLA and assembly, because the cost to London is great, especially these assembly members. Okay, so awesome. It seems odd. It seems odd I'm saying that. So why would I be saying that and I'm running for the post? Because I believe in direct democracy. And I believe we have to give Londoners the opportunity to go back and decide, do they still want this? And we can do that.
Awesome. So it's sounding like, and once again, please correct me if I'm wrong, it's sounding like as a direct democracy, whereby you're taking it out of the city hall into the town hall, giving people a greater say. One of the things is also, in effect, how that 17 billion gets spent. They will have a greater say in where some of that money goes.
This is because you see, who better to know what to spend on than the people on the ground, the people themselves, the community themselves, not people at the top. Who better than the people? And you see, we have to trust our people, and we have to bring back trust. You know, we have a representative democracy in this country that is not working. We've seen it. We're living almost in a totalitarian society right now. I won't go into the whole, obviously, situation with COVID, but we need, at least at a local level, at London level, a direct democracy where people can have a say, where people can hold their, a quick example, with a direct democracy, no MP can sit as an MP for 4 to 5 years. He can sit there and just come for your votes every 5 years and then don't see him for 5 years. Basically, with 10% or 20% of the electorate saying we want to get rid of him, that triggers a vote in that local area, and that triggers what's called something called recall. You have the power of recall. So guess what happens? The MPs now have to work for their money if they know that the people can hold them to account, and that's what direct democracy does.
Awesome, and thank you very much for clearing that. I think that's a very key, important factor. It sounds interesting to me. It's obviously piqued my interest, and I'm sure that there'll be many listeners out there who may not have come across such a system, who straight away may see some of the benefits and what that means to them and their everyday lives. Next question. So, campaigns typically require funding, as you mentioned, when we've had candidates who come from Labour or the Conservatives. And I believe that some of the people you might be up against will be representing those parties, which typically means that they will have a degree of funding behind them. Once again, these assumptions, being somebody who's never run for these positions before. If that assumption holds true, I'm assuming, therefore, campaigns require funding. How are you intending to fund, or how is yours being funding, or how are you intending to fund it?
I'll do this quickly. Our campaign has been funded by volunteers. The same volunteering that I did has been done now with me. Many volunteers with printing, supporting family, friends. There's an uneven, unlevel playing field at the moment, because we were told we can only start campaigning from Monday, the 8th, whereas Labour and Conservative had the opportunity to put flyers and leaflets and stuff through your door that landed on people's doors in London over the last 7 to 10 days. It relies on goodwill of people. I like to just give this.
So 1 second, I'm just going to throw in a quick question. This is more for me to understand the nuances of how that works. So, is there any reason why candidates from the major parties, once again, I'm making assumptions here, right, were allowed to start their campaign 10 days ahead of people who may not come from any of the major parties?
the reason why you received, and I received in my home, the reason why you see a big flyers and newspaper articles came through the door was that they were able to dissect the system. It was legal. They used the post office. So you couldn't leaflet drop, but they used the post office to do a posting. And they had the mechanism, the data to do that. Obviously,
Gotcha.
I don't have that. And
Gotcha.
that's right. But it's important as well. So can I just give out my campaign website? I mean, it's on there. People can donate. They have a look. A quick one. It's Neville for FOR London.com. Simple. Neville4London.com.
Okay, awesome. So there you go. You got Neville4London.com up there as well, and also you got an email address which I believe is Neville, and I've got it showing up as well. Neville #4 LDN.today as well.
No,
So
Neville at Nev
4 LDN.
Yeah, Neville. Yeah. Neville at Nev4London.today. Neville at Nev4London.today.
Not a problem. It's up on the screen, so people will be able to see it as well. And so,
thank you.
One last question for you, and I guess in closing, what would you like to say to the audience, to anybody out there who's listening, who is unsure, doesn't know which way they're going to vote? What would be the last thing you'd say to them?
You see, I know that we're facing a challenging time, and the third wave, we've had 2 waves, but the third wave is the one to come when we ease lockdown. And that's going to be how we're supporting many people who are going to go through psychological, emotional challenges. So there's a saying that goes, if your actions inspire others to dream more, lend more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. And that would be my call to action. It will be my actions. I will raise levels of expectation. I will raise levels of aspiration. And I will support from bottom up. Yes, we will only be as strong as our weakest in our community. And I believe that strongly. A society is only as strong as its most vulnerable. And I will ensure that the vulnerable are taken care of during my tenure as London Mayor.
Awesome. And I really appreciate you. Thank you very much for taking the time out from your busy schedule. And I guess since your campaign, when did you say your campaign started? Was it yesterday or last week?
It started in really Monday, and now we're doing fundraising. We've got a short space of time to raise. We've got to raise, and now to get onto the, look, I may not get it. Look, I'm going to be very brutal just to close this. I may not get on the starting line here. There's every chance I could not get on the starting line because we don't raise enough funds to get into the race. To get into the race, we need 25,000 just to get into the race. And we've spent a lot of our money doing all the stuff we've done already, and the stuff online and all the printing stuff we've done in ready. But now we have to do that, and we've got a short space of time. And that's why we got this funding page up there, and we've got a crowdfunding going to go out this week. And we've got some friends who are going to get onto that, and we'll just continue to put it to prayer. And that's what we've done, myself and my team. We prayed on this, and we will continue to trust in the Lord. And that's it. And if it's His will will be done. But I accept whatever. I accept whatever outcome, because I believe the message that I have would resonate to the people of London.
Awesome. Great stuff. And thank you once again for sharing your time, sharing those thoughts. So for the listeners out there, if there's anything that Neville shared that's moved you in that direction, there's the website there, Neville4London.com. And please go over there to find out a bit more about what he plans should he succeed in the campaign, which we, obviously that's what this show is about, for him to be able to put forward to what he intends to do. And like I said, if any of that resonates to you, please do head over to that website, do whatever you can to support. Also, here's Neville's email address as well, once again. So if you've got any questions, do feel free to reach out to him, to contact him. I mean, at the end of the
Can
day,
you read it out? Can you just read it out again? Because I can't see it on the screen. See, I can't see it.
Okay, so it's Neville, so Neville at nev4ldn.today.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
No problem. And so, yeah, so there you have it, guys. Once again, this is an exploration into the 2021 London Mayor candidate. An exploration. What I mean is, this was an opportunity, a platform for us to be able to have this discussion, to ask some questions and see, how we can support, whether it aligns with our personal views. You've got the details of where you can find him. Please do get behind it. And let's remember, this is all part of a bigger picture. We need to start playing a bigger role in politics in order for us to have a bigger impact on all other areas of our life. So thank you very much. And as we wrap up, just a reminder, YouTube, you can follow us, Circulate on YouTube. Then, oops, I haven't got the rest of my stuff here. So www.circulate.co.uk, just go over to there. And then if you go on Facebook Circulate, you'll find us as well. And so, as we wrap up, once again, Neville, I'm going to say really thank you very much. I wish you all the best. When is the election day anyway?
Thursday, May the 6th.
Thursday, May the 6th is when we go out and cast our votes.
Absolutely. Yeah, May the
Awesome.
6th.
Usually, how long does it take? Is it a bit like America? Is everyone going to start like contesting it and then marching on City Hall, or will we be able? Like, it's usually like a short time period where we get it like a straightforward, here's your new mayor type thing.
No, well, you go. Obviously, it will start ramping up a little bit over the next, probably not till about April. At the moment, it's a slow burn, and then you'll start hearing a lot more. But then May the 6th, of course, and 2 days after that, this year they delayed it because of COVID. The counting is going to take a little longer. The way we vote is going to be a little bit different, of course, as well. So yeah, but look, it's been a difficult time for everybody, and I know really that we all are going to reevaluate and recalibrate what we've done, how we do things. So I just thank God for the opportunity that I have, that I can be even running for mayor, and I can do this. And if I can support my community, but also support the people of London, I'll do that. I'm their servant, and I'm here to serve.
Awesome. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So once again, that's the 2021 London Mayor candidate, Neville Watson, and go to details. And once again, all that's left is to wish you the best to all the audience out there. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.